What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel.
Alright, so when it comes to like alternate reality stories where things pop off, in DC Comics, right? Because Injustice is a whole different universe. It's a whole different reality. When it comes to stories like this, where things pop off and the DC superheroes just go to war with one another, there haven't been a whole lot of these. There have only been a handful. Marvel's kind of the thing where it's like all the superheroes are fighting each other. Right or wrong, whether people love it or hate it, that's one of the things that Marvel focuses on in a lot of ways. DC, there was always bickering, there was always some infighting, but it was never like a catastrophic failure of the system. Like, it had never played out the way that it really did in Injustice. The closest thing that we ever got to this was really like, I'd say Kingdom Come when it came to alternate reality stories. Now, there have been in-continuity stories, where things just pop off, Blackest Night, so on and so forth, but, you could probably count those kind of stories on one hand. But Kingdom Come was always like my go-to because it was like, the writing was beautiful, the Alex Ross's art was incredible, it was like the golden age of comics, an era when heroes walked a little bit taller, when their moral compass wasn't as ambiguous, as it is these days. But the idea is that Injustice just like turns everything on its head, right? And like we would expect that because year one was kind of slow. Like I was going through year one, I was like, man, there's a lot of build here. Maybe we'll get around to some action. I hope we do because I love Tom Taylor's writing, but it's really kind of slow. Year two, things pop off. They go insane. So let's get into this. I know you guys are dying to get into this if you guys haven't skipped ahead already. But with regards to year two, the first thing we do, of course, is we pick up with the funeral of Oliver Queen. Because keep in mind, the whole of year one was building up with the idea of Superman imposing his world domination, forcing the planet Earth into peace, that kind of thing. And it really kind of came to a head when Lex Luthor had been developing a super pill that would grant people like super strength, durability, things like that. It didn't really grant them like all the powers of Superman, but it granted them far more powers than a lot of people really had on their own, and certainly, powers that normal human beings just simply didn't have. And it was designed for the purpose of Superman basically creating an army so that he could have people that would uphold his peace, basically super police, with regards to DC's landscape. And that was the thing, Tom Taylor was basically painting the stage where Superman was doing all the wrong things for all the right reasons. And it was kind of funny seeing this play out because the last ditch effort of Batman was to basically launch this group that was going to go into the Fortress of Solitude, steal this pill. But once he got there, he realized Clark Kent's parents were there. And he was like, we gotta go. We need to leave, like, not now, but right now. Because it was it was the whole issue that, like, if Superman came to the realization Batman was in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman will put two and two together and come to the belief that Batman was after his parents. And so Batman's like, we gotta go, we gotta leave. Of course, Oliver Queen was the last man standing and ultimately died, going against Superman. And because of this, it's actually a really cool situation because this is lines being drawn. We're really at a point where there's no coming back. I mean, the sides have been chosen. There's no coming back for this. And in fact, this is evident when Black Canary is talking to Hal Jordan and she says, look, are you with him on this? Are you with Superman on this? And Hal Jordan says, yes, but before she even lets him finish, she's like, you've chosen your side. You're on the side of Superman, which means you're an enemy to me. And she basically turns her back on him and walks away. Now, the cool thing here is Superman shows up. And this is funny because it's always like Superman killing people and then apologizing for it later. And it's kind of funny. It seems really out of character, but it works. It works to see Superman so emotional because the coolest thing about this, and it's really easy to forget when you're going through all these events in this, the coolest thing about this is that Superman is a grieving man. That's all he is. He's a man who lost his wife and unborn child. He's just grieving, and he genuinely believes he's making the world a better place. The problem with this is that the lengths he's going to go to achieve that goal are basically going to see him saving a world that ends up being killed. And so it's like, of what use is a dead world to a man that's trying to save it? I mean, not literally dead, but in terms of, superheroes and the idea of DC's, moral compass, so on and so forth. I guess killing the morality of the DC universe, if there ever was such a thing. But the idea here is that, Black Canary turns around and says, look, you're an enemy to me. You fooled everybody else. All these other superheroes are on your side, Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, so on and so forth. They all believe you. They believe in Superman's cause, but that's because they looked up to you as somebody to aspire to, but they haven't seen how far you've fallen. They haven't seen that you're not a hero anymore, that you're a bad guy, that you're a villain. You're an evil dictator showing up on Earth trying to seize control of the planet because you can't get over the fact that a senseless act resulted in the death of your family. And it's kind of ironic here. This is the crazy situation because we look at Superman and it's like, yeah, man, Superman's family died. That's messed up. But how many other families have died in the wake of Superman's attempts to take over the world? How many families died before Lois Lane and, the unborn child of Superman died? How many families will die after this reign comes to an end? Families die all the time, and they're separated, and it's always a terrible terrible thing. But Superman has the ability to do what he thinks is best in fixing the planet, but he's not fixing anything. He's just making things progressively worse. And that's what Black Canary says. She's like, look, because of the fact that you killed Oliver Queen, I don't care if it costs me my life, I'm going to bring you down. I'm going to bring down everything you know and love. Now from here, we switch to the return of Kyle Rayner, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, Kyle Rayner. He's like the happy guy. Like he's like the replacement for Dick Grayson, right? I mean, Dick Grayson died, and so it's like the bright shining light of the DC universe is dead. Well, now we have Kyle Rayner back, and I was like, yes, I'm so excited about this. And it was such an exciting moment to see Kyle Rayner's return. It was a beautiful moment. The problem is that it's short-lived, and the reason why is because as soon as he gets within vicinity of the Earth, he's met by the arrival of Sinestro. And Sinestro basically says, look, I've been here. I've been watching all these events on Earth unfold. And Sinestro's like, this is my chance. If ever there were an opportunity to seize control of the planet Earth, to corrupt the Justice League and turn them to the Sinestro Corps, now is the time to do it. Because you got to keep in mind, the Sinestro Corps is very capable. But the members of the Sinestro Corps, the various people who were there, pale in comparison to if the Justice League were members of the Sinestro Corps. Superman, Wonder Woman, Hal Jordan. Imagine if all those guys were members of the Sinestro Corps. Imagine the havoc they would wreak. Their existing powers combined with a lantern ring would make them virtually unstoppable. And it's insane. And that's what Sinestro's banking on. He's like, imagine if I had Superman as a member of the Sinestro Corps. And so where Kyle Rayner tries to step in and says, look, you can't do this. The funny thing is that he is a little bit cocky. He's a little bit arrogant here. That's Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner's cocky, arrogant, but he has it where it counts. He's a lot like Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner gets carried away. He's hot-headed, but if there's anybody you want in your corner when it comes to fighting anybody, it's Guy Gardner. The issue with this is that Sinestro preys on this arrogance almost right off the bat. And instead of allowing Kyle Rayner to go about his nonsense, he rips off the ring of Kyle Rayner, rips his finger off. Kyle Rayner's exposed to the depths of space, and he's pulled apart by the members of the Sinestro Corps. Kyle Rayner is killed. And it's like, oh my God, dude, I saw that and I was going through this and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they killed Kyle Rayner like that. It blew my mind. I was like, Jesus, they killed him quick, fast, and in a hurry. And so at this point, we pick up with an encounter between Commissioner Gordon and Superman. And this is like one of those small little goodies that we get in Injustice, because we almost never see Superman and Commissioner Gordon speaking with one another because it's just not Superman's thing. Superman almost never shows up in Gotham City. He does from time to time, but certainly not in this capacity. Seeing a conversation between Superman and Commissioner Gordon is kind of cool because Gordon always deals with Batman. But even if Gordon doesn't know who Batman's identity is, he knows that Batman's just a guy. He's just a man. Superman is basically a god. And it's funny because when Superman shows up to Commissioner Gordon, he doesn't flinch. He's like, man, I don't care about you. Like, all I know is you're just some dictator guy. I know you're Superman. I know what you're about. But you're a dictator, man. Like, you're a tyrant just like every other tyrant that I've ever put away. You're no different. And when this all comes crashing down, you're going to be thrown in jail just like everybody else. Now, of course, this is Commissioner Gordon talking as a commissioner. But the funny thing about this is, Superman's basically like, where is Batman? He wants to know where Batman is because remember, Superman's basically trying to eliminate Bruce Wayne at this point. He's trying to get rid of Batman. Basically because Batman's going to be the cog that's going to get in his way. He's going to be the one that's going to screw up everything. And so for Superman, Batman's really more of like a hindrance than a help. And so it's past the point where they can talk things out. It's past the point where they can work together. Instead, Superman's just like, where's Batman at? Now, of course, Commissioner Gordon's like, I have no idea. I don't know where he is. Now, Gordon genuinely doesn't know where Batman is. I mean, he has no idea where he is, and we'll find out where Batman was taken here in a second. But at this moment, Commissioner Gordon's like, I don't know. I have no idea what happened. But what happens is Superman says, look, I can see into your body. You've got large masses all over your lungs. Your cancer in your lungs is metastasizing. It's spreading everywhere. You only have a limited amount of time. You need to go talk to your daughter. This is Tom Taylor doing two things. The first is basically saying there's a ticking clock on Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon will not survive to see the end of Injustice. But it's also him saying that Commissioner Gordon now has motivation. That Commissioner Gordon is basically a man with nothing to lose. And when it comes to something like that, when he knows that his time is limited, what a man will do with the last few moments of his life in a situation like this tells the tale of who that man is. And we know Commissioner Gordon is a badass. And so there's going to be some badass scenes with Commissioner Gordon, which I'm really, really hyped about. But from here, we basically jump to Bruce Wayne. Now, the cool thing about this is Bruce Wayne basically exists out of all space and time. And in fact, he's told this by Zatanna. The question he asks is, where am I? Where's here? And she says, you're in the Tower of Dr. Fate. You're basically outside of all space and time. Now, of course, Dr. Fate being kind of this, kind of, but not really allegory to Doctor Strange. In Marvel Comics, the two of them sort of going hand in hand. I actually think there was a story called Doctor Strange Fate when Marvel versus DC crossed crossed over and they created the Amalgam Universe. The idea here is that the Tower of Fate basically allows Dr. Fate to access the multiverse from a multitude of different places. But one thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to Zatanna, this is a character we've almost never talked about. Zatanna is basically a magic wielder, and one of the reasons why Tom Taylor brought her in is because she can be this sort of, not really a counter so much as a way to stave off Superman. Because remember, Superman is weak to magic. That's one of his inherent weaknesses. It's one of the things that makes him, defeatable, so to speak, in DC Comics. But when it comes to Zatanna, the other half of this is, remember, she has to cast spells by speaking backwards. That's what she does, and of course, when Bruce Wayne tries to get up, when he tries to move, Batman being as stubborn as he is, she basically, whispers a spell, putting him back to sleep again, more or less knocking him out. And so this is when we essentially learn that there's a lot more people here than we initially thought there were. Of course, you do have Alfred, the one that brought him here, but we're also going to learn that the roster of individuals who are here at Bruce's side and are going to be working on his behalf it's actually pretty expansive. It's pretty large. But at this point, we transition to Oa with the Guardians of the Universe. Now, for those of you guys who are just coming along to this video, who just happen to see it, and we're just kind of like, hey, that's cool, I want to watch this. I don't want to leave you hanging. I don't want to leave you guys confused. I don't want to leave you left out and left in the dark here. So for those of you guys who are familiar with the Guardians, bear with me for the next minute or so while I kind of run over this. So the Guardians of the Universe view themselves as like the protectors of the universe, and they have a pretty lengthy history. We don't need to go into all of it, but they have a pretty lengthy history. But the fact remains that they have basically removed all facets of emotion from themselves. The only member of the Guardians of the Universe that has any real measure of emotion or really, any attachment to anything, at least in Injustice anyway, is Gantlet. And Gantlet always has this kind of this special place in the hearts and minds of Green Lantern fans. A lot of it's because of Jeff Johns' run. Not many people know about Green Lantern before Jeff Johns' run because that's the run that brought them in. But the idea is that the Guardians of the Universe are basically watching the events on Earth unfold. And they're saying, look, the balance of power is shifting. The Earth holds some of the most powerful beings in the entirety of the DC universe. And where, Gantlet's basically saying we have to intervene, we have to become involved, the other Guardians are saying, no, we don't. That's one Earth in an infinitely expanding universe composed of a multitude of habitable planets. We have much bigger fish to fry than worry about a single planet. But Gantlet makes a really good point here. He says, look, these are some of the most powerful beings. How many wars have spun out into the universe because of the actions of this small group of people? How many wars have taken place because of them? And so ultimately he brings in Guy Gardner and says, look, your goal is going to be to travel to Earth, and see if you can figure out what's going on, see if you can bring Hal Jordan back, see if you can basically have him, held accountable for his actions. The other half of this is they basically say, look, Kyle Rayner's missing. And so it's kind of like Guy Gardner's playing this role of figuring out what's going on at Earth and to why it is that things have basically gone to pot. And so what we do is we transition to the Justice League Watchtower, and we pick up with Superman, of course, the unconscious body of Wonder Woman having sustained the explosion with the death of Captain Atom, I think it was. And we basically have Superman basically, saying here, the governments are basically shutting down. The US government is going to be shutting down. Congress is going into recess, and I have no idea when they'll come back. No bills can be passed if Congress isn't there. If the Senate's not there, if the House isn't there, no bills are going to get passed. Basically, the government comes to a standstill. Superman tells Hal Jordan, your job is to keep that from happening. And so both Hal Jordan and the Flash travel to Congress and say, you guys are going to stay in session. No one's leaving. You're going to stay here and you're going to do your jobs. Now, from here, we transition to the introduction of Oracle. Now, it's cool that Tom Taylor chose this. It's cool that Tom Taylor chose this whole thing because at this point in the history of Barbara Gordon's character and, in DC Comics, she had already been cured. She had already basically had her ability to walk. But for a lot of DC fans, Barbara Gordon as Oracle was one of the best roles she'd ever played. A lot of fans looked at Barbara Gordon and said, yeah, cool, the Batgirl thing is interesting, whatever, but she's basically a ripoff of Batman. They loved the idea of Oracle because she was like this hidden hand behind the scenes. She was involved in so many different things. And so I would imagine that was the reason why Tom Taylor grabbed the Oracle concept and rolled it in. But what we have is, really Oracle speaking to the President of the United States on behalf of Batman. Because remember, Batman and the President are more or less working together for the purpose of trying to topple Superman using whatever means they can. And what Oracle says is, you're speaking to me on behalf of Batman. I'm just as capable as he is. Tell me what's going on. And what the President says is, of course, again, Hal Jordan and the Flash are showing up in Congress. They're forcing Congress to stay in session. It's basically Superman extending his control to the US government itself. Now, the cool thing about this is Superman is not telling Congress what laws to pass, not that he would even need to, but it's basically forcing Congress to stay in session. And Tom Taylor's drawing on a few things here. One of the things that he's drawing on is, the idea of Hal Jordan basically saying, look, you as members of Congress are corrupt as hell. You don't answer to the people, you answer to some external third party somewhere, whether it's corporations, whatever it happens to be, special interest groups. You're not answering to the people anymore. He says, look, the fact that you say you're bailing out and you're going to go into recess shows that you don't care about the American people because they still have laws that need to be passed. There are things that still need to be done. You still need need to run your country. And so what Hal Jordan says is, that's your job. Your job is to run the country. Just because things are tough doesn't mean you can bail out. Run your country, do your damn job. And it's kind of cool to see this happening because it's more or less Superman kind of doing at least one good thing by forcing Congress to do their job, forcing Congress to stay there. The problem with this is that it's Superman continuing to expand his will and basically dominate all these different aspects of American society. And so from here, we pick up with Hippolyta. Now, with regards to Injustice, one of the cool things about this is we basically have Hippolyta, the mother of Wonder Woman, talking to Superman and saying, it's okay, this isn't your fault, you're basically in the right here. The reason why this is important is because this is Tom Taylor showing us how far removed Superman and people like him are from the reality of the situation. Hippolyta and the Amazons, over there, Themyscira, exist removed from society. They're not part of American society. They're not even part of the world society. They exist in isolation. They're not there on the front lines when you have people that are telling you a curfew's at 9 p.m. You have to go indoors. They have no authority over them with the exception of the gods that almost rarely get involved in the normal affairs. Instead, it's Hippolyta that basically runs the show. Everybody's subservient to her, but then there's also some sort of shared mentality in terms of how their society is ran. Superman is the exact same way. Who's going to challenge Superman? No one can challenge Superman. He's basically eliminated everybody who can. And so because of this, these two do not really understand the full ramifications of their actions or how their actions impact normal people. But all this changes with the arrival of Sinestro. Now, of course, Sinestro's appearance here with regards to Superman is one that's shocking, and Superman immediately turns against him. And this is something I'd like you to keep in the back of your head, because over the course of this video, what we're going to find out is just how far Superman's fallen and how easy it is to fall that far, but also how smart and cunning Sinestro is, because Tom Taylor writes him in a way that he is basically a guy who's pulling all the strings, but no one knows it. No one realizes it because they're so swept up in everything that they're doing. And so, following Hal Jordan and the Flash forcing Congress to stay in session, once they leave, we have Gantlet and Guy Gardner arriving here. Now, the cool thing is Gantlet basically says, take me to Superman. That's your job. Now, the way that Tom Taylor does this is so cool. Gantlet could have this great big huge grandiose speech to Hal Jordan, and he'll have that later on, but we know how powerful the Guardians of the Universe are. They are wildly capable in terms of their abilities, able to take out cores and crush planets, and it almost borders reality warping. And so because of that, with their abilities, Gantlet wanting to appear before Superman tells us that if Gantlet wanted to, while it would be difficult for him to kill Superman, he could pull it off. And so it's almost like, we expect this battle, Superman's regime, to kind of come crashing down, but Gantlet also represents this measure of hope, in the sense that it's like he could be the one to end Superman's reign. And so because of this, with Gantlet meeting with Superman, what he basically says is, look, you've helped us a lot in the past. You've fought alongside the Green Lantern Corps on a multitude of occasions. So he says, I'm not here as a conqueror. I'm not here as a man, for the purpose of deposing you. What I'm here to do is offer you advice, is to advise you, to basically say, look, this course of action that you're taking, this direction that you're going in is not going to benefit you. And he says, because we're guardians of the universe. We were old when the universe was new. We've been around for eons, for billions and billions and billions of years. We've seen 100 million different rulers just like you, and we'll see 100 million different rulers after you. But he says, look, you have to stop this because all it's going to do is lead to your own self-destruction. The problem with this is that he counters by asking the question, if you've been around for billions of years, and it's kind of funny, this question I don't think was ever asked by Superman before, but he says, if you've been around for billions of years and you've seen empires rise and fall, and you had the ability to stave off their destruction, then were you aware of Krypton's destruction? And if you were, why didn't you stop it? And it's such a huge moment because it's like Superman is looking in the face of a man that could have kept his race alive. And it begs the question, what would it have been like if the Guardians of the Universe had gone in and helped the members of Krypton? If they had helped the Kryptonians keep their planet alive? If the Guardians had stepped in and said, look, we're offering our wisdom, we're offering our guidance, you need to listen to Jor-El. Your planet's core is failing, it will be destroyed. You all need to evacuate. What if that had happened? And what if the Kryptonians had done that? Superman's race would have taken up residence on a different planet, and God only knows what the universe would have looked like. It may have been better, it may have been worse, but it presents a really interesting situation. The problem with this is that Superman, when Gantlet doesn't answer, Superman responds by saying, you come here lecturing me about responsibility, but you Guardians with the power to stave off destruction and take no action to do so, basically avoid your responsibility. You do not do your jobs by making the universe a peaceful place. You do your jobs cowering in your ivory towers, talking about how, well, the universe needs to unfold naturally, so on and so forth. People should be allowed to live their lives, while all the while letting dictators eliminate billions of people left and right. And so it creates this really, really cool situation because now Superman says, you have no reason to be here. know, you have no reason to be in this place. You have nothing here that you can offer me. There's nothing here that you can do. And so ultimately, Gantlet basically walks away and takes Hal Jordan with him. Now, the reason why this was so significant is because of the fact that Gantlet was here for two purposes. Yes, it was to offer some measure of advice. Yes, it was try to sway Superman away from his course, but it was also to see how far Superman's fallen. Because remember, they fought alongside him for years and years and years and years. They know Superman when he's at his absolute peak as a hero. And this is the kind of the cool thing, because we get to this moment right now, we can jump back to the opening scene when we have Superman and Lois Lane speaking to one another, and how enlightening he is, how electric he is in terms of making us feel better as we read his stories. It's like, yeah, Superman, he's just this great, beautiful, wonderful thing. And then you look at him now and he's just so base, he's so angry, so full of wrath, so full of rage and mourning and sadness and sorrow. You know, it's just like, wow, he's just fallen so far. And so, you know, following this with Gantlet going back to Oa and basically saying Superman is beyond any real measure of redemption, what happens is he recalls all these different members of the Green Lantern Corps. He brings them all to Earth. Of course, you have Hal Jordan, who he brings in. He grabs John Stewart, he grabs Kilowog, all these different members of the Green Lantern Corps. He brings them all in, you know, and basically says, you guys need to convene with us as a council. We need to figure out what our next course of action is going to be. Now, from here, we pick up with Commissioner Gordon going to speak with Barbara. Now, here's the funny thing about this is he basically takes her by surprise. Barbara's like, you know, wow, it's incredible to see you. You know, I didn't think you were going to be here or whatever, you know, but Commissioner Gordon's like, I want to know where Batman is. And Barbara basically feigns dumb. She's like, I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm Barbara Gordon. And Commissioner Gordon's like, no, you're not fooling me. I know you're Oracle. I know Bruce Wayne is Batman. I know everything that's going on with this. I'm not nearly as stupid as you think I am. He's like, I knew you were Batgirl when you first took off, like when you put on a Batgirl suit and jumped out your window to go fight alongside Batman. He's like, I know this because I'm a detective. My job is to figure things out. It wasn't that hard to trace what was going on. The problem with this is that once the arguing was done, you know, once the anger gets done, you know, once she basically says, well, Batman's in some tower beyond space and time and he's basically guarded by magic, and Jim Gordon's like, yeah, okay, whatever, that doesn't help me. He sits down and basically says, I have to tell you, I have cancer. I'm dying. Now, this is crushing for Barbara Gordon because Barbara's lost a lot of the most important things in her life, and the reality of the situation hasn't quite sunk in yet. Instead, you know, she's like, we have to focus on Superman. It's her basically turning her attention away from the situation and focusing on, you know, or I guess basically revealing the birds of prey, her allies, you know, Catwoman, Black Canary, Huntress, Batwoman. You know, it's revealing these things to Jim Gordon. And the reason why is because Barbara Gordon knows if she were to focus on the reality of everything that was going on, if she were to basically acknowledge the fact that her father's dying, it would put her in such an emotional state that she wouldn't be able to function adequately. It would crush her. She wouldn't be able to stay focused on the task at hand. And so she basically takes her humanity, puts it to the side for a second and says, we still have to find a way to defeat Superman. Now from here, we jump back to Superman and the Flash, again, you know, alongside Lex Luthor, with Sinestro being held prisoner at the Justice League Watchtower. Now this is the cool thing. This is why I say this Sinestro is so cunning and why Sinestro is so smart. When he's talking to Superman, you know, he says, look, we're basically the same person. You and I are the same. Where Superman lost Lois Lane and his unborn child in some senseless act, Sinestro says, we're the exact same. I had a wife. I had a family. You know, I lived on Karuga. I had my own sector. I was the greatest of the Green Lanterns. The problem is that much like you, when I came back and I basically saw that my planet was in disorder, when I saw that my planet was in chaos, I wanted to make it better. I wanted to restore order to a planet that had lost its way. And in doing so, the Guardians of the Universe basically told me I was unfit to be a Green Lantern. When my wife died, I basically came to this realization that the former government that I had cast out had somehow sought retribution, and in return, in my desire to basically see justice done, the Green Lantern Corps cast me out. They threw me out and said, you're no longer a member of the Green Lantern Corps. Now, we know the origin story of Sinestro is much darker and it's far more base. Sinestro was corrupted by his power, is basically what it was. He went back to his home planet. He wanted to institute order. He wanted to institute law. He made himself a dictator. And in doing so, that's why the Green Lantern Corps, that's why they cast him out of the Green Lantern Corps, because he was not imposing justice. He was imposing control. And so because of that, you know, he basically goes on to talk about how Hal Jordan turned against him, how the greatest of the Green Lanterns had conquered him, how he was ousted and he was forced, you know, to basically leave the Corps, ultimately leading to him creating his own Sinestro Corps. Now, in response to this, what he says is, look, because of this, you and I are friends, you and I are allies, whether you know it or not, we're fighting for the same cause. I've been down the road that you're on, and I want to guide you to finding the success that you're looking for, to finding the order that you're looking for. He says, look, you know, the reason why I'm not ruling Kruger is because I was forced out by an enemy that basically didn't want to see me in control. They didn't want to see order. They didn't want to see structure. They wanted to allow the universe to be chaotic. They wanted to allow the universe to continue on a destructive path. He says, Superman, I will be your aid. I will be your advisor. I will help you along your journey to make the earth a more structured place. Now, Superman doesn't trust Sinestro after this, but he is beginning to move towards that direction. This is compounded by the fact that Sinestro basically leaves his facility and says, here's my lantern ring. Analyze it, do whatever you want to do with it, but I'm basically powerless now. This is my way of showing you that I trust you. Do the same. Show me that you trust me. And so what we do is we transition over to, I guess, back to Oa with the arrival of these Green Lantern members alongside Hal Jordan, who's basically being questioned by the Guardians of the Universe. The question they have is Superman beyond redemption? Is there any way to bring him back? Hal Jordan's response is no, but it's because he's doing the right thing. There's nothing to bring him back from. He hasn't fallen. He's not a bad guy. He's basically bringing order to a planet that has been disordered up to this point. Now, this is really kind of cool because basically it's Hal Jordan saying, I follow everything that Superman is doing. The issue with this is that Hal Jordan doesn't see what's going on. Now, Hal Jordan doesn't see that Superman is beginning the early stages of imposing a dictatorship. He doesn't see any of that. What he sees is that Superman is making the planet better. Superman is giving people a reason to hope again. He's removing destruction. He's removing violence. He's removing criminals. And Hal Jordan believes there's going to be this, this brave new world that comes out of everything that Superman is doing. He sees what he believes is the light on the other side. What he doesn't realize is that at the end of this tunnel isn't light from a brand new era, from a great world. It's light from the fires of a world that's being burned down around them. And because of that, Hal Jordan doesn't realize the collision course that he's on. And so because of this, when the other members of the Green Lantern Corps arrive, they basically say, look, the Guardians want us to go to Earth and they want us to bring Superman back. You, Hal Jordan, have to stay here. Your judgment's compromised. If you go with us, you will try to stand in our way. And Hal Jordan says, yeah, I believe in him. I believe that he's right. And so he basically attacks the other members of the Green Lantern Corps. And in response, he's basically confined to Oa. He's forced to stay behind. Now, in response to this, the members of the Green Lantern Corps basically hold him captive. But the cool thing about this is that, John Stewart seems to be against him. He says, look, it's over. We have our orders from the Guardians. Yes, I was on the Justice League. Yes, I'm an ally of Superman, but my duty is to the Guardians of the Universe first and to Superman and the Justice League second. That's the responsibility I undertook when I became a member of the Green Lantern Corps. I can't put my love for Earth above the need of my whole sector. And Hal Jordan basically says, well, then that's your problem. That's why you're weak, because you can't do what needs to be done. It's basically this depiction that Hal Jordan has officially just fallen almost in his entirety. And so where he's knocked out by the members of the Green Lantern Corps and he's basically taken prisoner, and they're all sent on a mission to basically go capture Superman. In the midst of him being held by Salak, as again, one of the members of the Green Lantern Corps, an unknown person comes up behind Salak, knocks him out, and frees Hal Jordan, only for us to find out that this is John Stewart. John Stewart says, I agree with you. I agree with your point. I agree with where you stand here. The Earth needs to be made a better place. Superman may be going about it in a way that could be a little bit better, but in the end, it's always darkest just before the light. And it's kind of ironic that he's taking that stance. John Stewart was always like this pillar of greatness. And in the eyes of a lot of Green Lantern fans, John Stewart is the best of the Green Lanterns, not Hal Jordan. And so it creates this really interesting situation because it's like the Earthbound Green Lanterns are picking their sides. The only holdout is Guy Gardner. And so following this, we pick up with Superman going to visit Billy Batson. This is actually kind of funny here, because he basically shows up in a kid's elementary school surrounded by 12th graders and says, I need to speak with Billy Batson, drawing the attention of everybody, drawing the attention of all these 12-year-old kids who were there. And, of course, whisks him away and says, the government is moving against me. The planet is moving against me. Not only that, we basically have the Green Lantern Corps on their way in. We have to prepare for their arrival. We have to prepare for them to be here so we can force them off the planet Earth. And I need all hands on deck when this happens. The problem with this is that once the Green Lantern Corps arrive, they make it clear in no uncertain terms, they're not here to debate, they're not here to negotiate, they're not here to offer some kind of treaty with Superman, they're here to take him. They're here to take him away. Now, of course, Superman responds by having Cyborg activate, the satellite's defense systems and blast the Green Lantern Corps with a massive amount of energy. The problem with this is that, of course, the Green Lantern Corps is able to withstand an attack of this sort. And so in turn, they all begin going against Superman. But it's cool to see him taking on Kilowog, taking on all these members of the Green Lantern Corps and coming out on top. The funny thing about this is that in his hubris, he doesn't pay attention to the smallest of them, which is Chip the Squirrel. Fun fact, there is a story where Chip the Squirrel gets run over by a car and killed, I think. It's actually kind of messed up. It's funny, but it's kind of messed up. I think it's before Crisis on Infinite Earths. But the idea here is that Chip the Squirrel basically says, look, I'm using my Green Lantern ring and I'm shutting off the synapses in your brain. I'm basically knocking you out. The problem is that while all this is happening, again, Sinestro's cunning. Sinestro's very good at playing the ruse. And he basically starts talking to Lex Luthor and says, look, man, the Green Lantern Corps will defeat Superman. He can't take them all out. He can't defeat them all. Their power is just too great when they're working collectively. They're too well organized as a team. The only way for Superman to stand a chance of going without defeat is for me to become become involved. And so in essence, he talks Lex Luthor into freeing him. Now from here, it really hits the fan. Like everything really goes nuts. And the reason is because, you know, Kilowog basically says, hey, look, Chip, can you keep Superman in stasis while we're taking him back to Oa? And Chip says, yeah, that's not going to be a huge problem. Well, then suddenly Chip the Squirrel is killed when he's impaled by the lantern ring of Sinestro. And so Sinestro shows up here and it's like, this is done. This is all over. And it's so cool to see this. It's so cool to see Sinestro fighting on behalf of Superman, because of Sinestro going against the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps, as well as Shazam and Superman fighting together. So it's Sinestro, Shazam, Superman teaming up, going against the Green Lantern Corps. And it's such a battle that just, we would never really see anything like this. In addition to that, you know, once Hal Jordan, once John Stewart, you know, once they show up for the purpose of trying to figure out what's going on, we have Sinestro bringing in almost the entire Sinestro Corps for the purpose of really giving Sinestro some backup here. And so at this point, we transition over to Commissioner Gordon. Now, the cool thing about this is that Harvey Bullock, you know, one of the smug detectives that works under Jim Gordon, had basically gone against a couple of these super cops, you know, these cops taking pills that basically give them super strength, durability, so on and so forth, and challenging their authority. The issue with this is that he was, you know, crushed in almost no uncertain terms. But once he comes to alongside, you know, Officer Renee Montoya, once he wakes up to Jim Gordon, you know, Jim Gordon basically says, come with me. We're getting out of here. And the reason why is because you're leaving your shield behind. We're protecting our city against these super cops, and we'll do whatever we need to do in order to make that happen. And it's actually really cool. It's one of the reasons why I say Jim Gordon's a really cool guy, because you'll have a huge moment once we get to the end of this video. But with regards to the Sinestro Corps, Sinestro's getting back to Hal Jordan. Sinestro says, look, the Green Lantern Corps came to capture you. They came to take you. If we defeat any of these Green Lantern Corps and Corps members, there we go, and any of them make it back to Oa, they'll tell the Guardians what it is that happened here, and the Guardians will send the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps, because he's like, right now, these are just their elite guards, but there's thousands more waiting to be sent here. And if they're all sent here, the Earth will be conquered. The only solution we have is to eliminate all the members of the Green Lantern Corps that are here, or take those and turn them to our side as part of the Sinestro Corps. And in the end, you know, where Superman is talking to Hal Jordan, and, you know, Hal Jordan's like, do you really side with this? Superman's like, yeah, we don't really have a choice here. We have to keep the Earth protected, even if that means annihilating the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps in the process. And so at this point, we jump back to Commissioner Gordon as he's speaking on behalf of all these different, you know, speaking to all these different police officers alongside, you know, Barbara Gordon's Birds of Prey, so on and so forth. And what he says, you know, I guess speaking to all these cops, he says, look, we were the protectors of these cities, not these super cops. You know, we're the protectors of Gotham City. We're the ones that keep the streets safe. We haven't done the best job, but it's because the tools that we need haven't necessarily been given to us. But he says, now we have the tools to pull this off. Now we have the tools to do what needs to be done. And so what he says is, each of you are going to patrol our streets adequately. Each of you are going to cast these false idols out of here, and you're going to become protectors of Gotham City. The way you're going to do that is each of you are going to get one of these pills, and these pills are going to give you super strength and super durability. And by working together, we're going to take back the city of Gotham. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Yeah. God, I love Injustice. It is so good. It only gets better. It only gets so much better from here. It's insane. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.